Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Cache Variety Show, where we deliver a smorgasbord of Aotearoa sporting funk. We just touch on a bunch of different Aotearoa sporting thoughts that we've got, and we just serve them up for you. We have recorded the Patreon podcast yesterday on Monday, and there are a couple of clips of from that podcast on the YouTube page. So we're talking White Ferns versus Australia reaction, as well as New Zealand Warriors halves discussion that was recorded before news came out that Shaun Johnson is out injured, apparently. So that's cool. Not good for him, not good for the Warriors. But we do have clips from our Patreon podcast on the YouTube feed, so check those out. And the full podcast, including far more discussion on both those topics, as well as just general Aotearoa sporting chit-chat, recorded on the Monday morning, is live for the Patreon whānau. And Patreon is the best way to support the Niche Cache, our podcasts, our email banger, our blog, and our constant Aotearoa sporting scribbles on the website. Patreon's the best way to support all of that. We do a lot of pretty decent content, if we don't say so ourselves. And Patreon is the best way. So shout out to the Patreon whānau for supporting us up to this point. And if you are a member of the Patreon whānau, make sure you check out that podcast. Otherwise, join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/EL Niche Cache, L Niche Cache, kia kaha. Every Monday and Friday evening, we also deliver an email banger, which just has all the Niche Cache content, podcasts, links to the latest yarns, as well as extra yarns every Monday and Friday via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. Whack in your email address, and then the Niche Cache just arrives in your email inbox every Monday and Friday evening. So it's a pretty cool way just to get all the Niche Cache content direct to you, as well as current eventy type of yarns. Like, we react to what's going on and we preview what's going on, just stuff that we don't necessarily write about at the niche-cache.com, which has a couple of Kiwi-NRL spotlights that I've done. I did a little focus on Leo Thompson making his debut. I did a little focus on Isaiah Papali'i as well. So those are live on the website. The wildcard's written about Shane Warne being Aotearoa's best spinner. Got a full all-white squad reaction, breakdown. What else is the wildcard done there? He's got Flying Kiwis coming out on Tuesday evenings as well. So there's always plenty of Aotearoa sporting content live on the niche-cache.com. So whether you want to join the Patreon whānau or just tap in there, whether you want to sign up to the email banger or just tap in there, or whether you want to just check in with the latest of our Aotearoa sporting scribbles, it's all there for you. It's all laid out. And of course, we're delivering 2 podcasts a week, as well as that Patreon podcast. So we're just smashing out the Aotearoa sporting content, because that's what we fucking love to do. Wobbly Wildcard. We also love to dabble in a bit of mindfulness, a bit of the thought-provoking, growth, centering, grounding, breakthrough, blast off ideas. So what do you got?
What have I got? I have got patience is a conquering virtue. That was a line from medieval English poet Geoffrey Chaucer. Patience is a conquering virtue.
I think it's the word conquer, like, sparks something in my mind, because you conquer yourself through patience. And then you can also conquer, in the full sense of the word, you can conquer other things through patience as well. So you might conquer a situation just by displaying a little bit of patience, probably after you conquer yourself with patience. So it's like conquer yourself with patience, and then conquer other situations through that self-mastery, which patience is a major factor. And I'm also reminded that, like, the time frames we come up with in our minds aren't the time frames that the universe gives us. Like, we have no patience in our mind. We want everything to happen now. We want teams to win now. We want things to be manifested now. We want to do things now. We want to have this tomorrow. We want to do that then. We want to get there by then. Well, the universe doesn't give a shit about what you think and your timing. The universe has its own operation of timing, and the best way to tap into that is through patience.
Yes, and that's why it has to be that way around that you said. Like you have to conquer yourself before you can conquer external situations, because like if there is sort of like that yin and yang type thing, where if there is patience, like if there's a necessity or a requirement for patience, that means that your first your first instinct must be to do something impatient if the answer is to do something patient, because otherwise you're not being patient, you're just doing nothing. Like there has to be like a goal or a some kind of imperative involved in that for there to be patience required, which is by definition an internal struggle, right? So you have to conquer yourself first through that patience. One thing I quite like about that quote as well is like patience, because it's an internal thing. It's like, and this is technically a translation because he wrote it in like Old English. So it's not strictly his words, but the translation of his words for his meaning. I just like the juxtaposition there of like very poetic, of patience being this kind of like not inactive thing, because we just explained why it's not inactive, but it's this sort of like inwards thing, as opposed to like the word conquering has like connotations of being outgoing and proactive and things like there's sort of an opposites going on there. Do you want to hear the full like 6-line bit as part of the poem? You don't want to hear it.
Like we've already dabbled on. Like just go ahead, but don't waffle on. Let's go. Come on.
Patience is a conquering virtue. The learned say that if it not deserts you, it vanquishes what force can never reach. Why answer back at every angry speech? No, learn forbearance, and I'll tell you what, you will be taught it whether you will or not. There you go.
You will be taught patience. What was it? What was that last line?
You will be taught it whether you will or not, as in whether you will learn the forbearance or not.
Yeah, no surprise I didn't instantly remember that, because it's a as you said, Old English. Right here. Let's get this show started here. Wildcard. What are you going to do up top in the sizzling hot take section of the show?
Well, I do like this for a sizzling hot take, because you've heard of Twilight Taylor, of Ross Taylor's sort of like post Black Caps renaissance.
Malo.
Or how about, I haven't quite got a fancy title for it, but how about a bit of Twilight Winston Reid? So once upon a time, Winston Reid was this young prodigy coming up, 2010 World Cup, only recently got to the international level with New Zealand, played like Denmark youth grade stuff, and he provides one of the iconic footy moments in New Zealand history with that late-headed equaliser against Slovakia. Pretty soon, he's signing for West Ham, playing Premier League for like a decade. All these years later, Winston Reid has now left West Ham. He moved to the UAE to get himself fit, and there was big anticipation as to where he might go in January. Instead, he signs nowhere, still without a club. But being without a club means he is fully available for the entirety of this all-whites Oceania World Cup qualifying tournament in Qatar that's about to start later on this week. And maybe, just maybe, this is me joining some dots here rather than anything that's been said, but maybe those things are related. Like, Winston Reid for many years had to sacrifice internationals in order to advance his West Ham career. Like, he's likely to bring up his 30th cap during this tour. 30 caps and like since 2010 is not a lot. But he knows what it is to play at a World Cup, because he's done it before, and he knows that this is the best chance that the All Whites have had to qualify since the 2010 edition. Potentially his last chance to be a part of one. Whether deliberate or not, this pause in his club career kind of coincides with the All Whites like duty in a way which gives him a chance to take his career full circle back to the start there. Back in 2010, he was the young prodigy in a team led by the likes of Ryan Nelson and Simon Elliott. Now he's the one in the Ryan Nelson role. He's the one looking to guide what might be the strongest emerging generation of Kiwi players there's ever been. As far as I'm concerned, that is magical stuff. It is the stuff of prophecy and legend. It is Winston Reid's version of Twilight Taylor, and it is truly beautiful.
Twilight Taylor, what we got for Winston Reid? But a Red Sky Reid. Red Sky at night, Shepherd's Delight. It's Red Sky Reid.
I like that. I like
Lovely
that.
jubbly. Rightio, Wildcard. The Women's World Cup is happening, and my sizzling take here is that the White Ferns are exactly who they were. So they're exactly who they are. And they are right, like they have gone through this World Cup kind of how history suggests they should have. But I'm taking my personal opinion out of that. And I'm just saying, like, what they've done over the last few years is perfectly reflected in this World Cup. They have played 4 games. They've won 2. They've lost 2. They've had good moments. They've had shit moments. And they are, they're not perfectly poised. They're not delicately poised. They're just poised, being themselves. 4 games down, 3 games to go. And they face South Africa on Thursday, which is a big game. And especially after South Africa just gave England their 3rd loss of the tournament. And then the Kiwis face England on Sunday. So 4 games down so far in this World Cup. The White Ferns have been exactly who they are. 3 games to come is where things get a bit funky. Are they going to elevate their game and step into a period of consistency that they haven't quite shown, just like the heights that they have the potential to reach but haven't quite shown? Or are they going to be themselves and what they have been, and maybe would beat South Africa, lose to England, lose to South Africa, beat England, and then an easier game against Pakistan a week after? The next 3 games are going to show us what the White Ferns, what they kind of think they want to be. I think a lot of thinking here, but my take is that so far in this World Cup, the White Ferns have been exactly who they are, which is like, it's certainly not reason to be super celebratory, but also there's been a couple of headlines I've seen in the mainstream media folk about the diabolical loss to Australia. And it's just like, they always lose to Australia, kind of, it just always happens. I don't know. But the White Ferns are exactly who they are. Big couple of games coming up later this week as well. So tap into the White Ferns, because I believe they need some energy directed to them. I think they need like a spirit bomb type of situation where just a lot of energy is directed into that White Ferns spirit bomb to blow away South Africa and England. How about that? Let's get statistical here, Wildcard. Explore some stats to tell a yarn. What do you got?
Bit of Chris the Woodsman Wood. I believe it's time for some of that. Chris Wood had been playing superb for Newcastle ever since he signed without scoring goals. So the only thing that actually changed on Friday against Southampton was that he played superb and did score a goal. Still, it's nice to get the old monkey off the back. After all, Woodsman is a striker who prides himself on scoring goals, and it was his first for the club, and took him 8 games to finally put one away. So, of course, he was on a drought with Burnley before that as well, is worth mentioning. So all up, he actually went 14 games without scoring, which was his worst run for more than 6 years, which goes all the way back to the 2014-15 season, when he went 16 games in a row without scoring, a run that also crossed over multiple teams. In fact, that one actually crossed over 3 teams. He started at Leicester City, goes on a short-term loan to Ipswich, during which he doesn't score, and then it also encompasses his first couple of games for Leeds United. Remember that it was while he was at Leeds United that he truly broke out as a top-notch striker, just scoring goals for fun in the Championship. So bringing it all back around, though, to the initial point, like, the goals are not the most important thing for Chris Wood. It's nice to see him get that first goal, but that's not like what has been the bulk of his excellent Newcastle performances. Coach Eddie Howe has just consistently praised his efforts and performances throughout. His teammate Kieran Trippier was on a podcast recently where he praised the hell out of him and pretty much just said, like, look, don't even worry about the goals. Like, the thing that matters is that all his teammates can see and they know the work that he's doing for them to facilitate things leading from the front. And yeah, the fact is, from the moment Chris Wood showed up, Newcastle have been a different team. They've surged from 19th on the ladder and looking sure bets for relegation to 14th and looking sure bets for safety. Their results before he arrived go loss, loss, draw, loss, draw, draw, loss, loss, draw, loss, draw, draw, loss, draw, win, loss, 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 draw. Their results with him: draw, win, 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 draw, win, 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 and then a last-minute loss, 1-0 loss to Chelsea on the weekend. Not so great, but still. The first time, actually, they had tasted defeat since he signed for Newcastle. 11 points in 19 games without him versus 20 points in 9 games with him. I would call that rather emphatic.
Emphatic Eddie. Well, just for the folks watching this variety show on YouTube, you've had 2 football references already, and there's a football joker in your background. So who is I assume the dude doing the googly eyes is Bill Tuiloma, is that correct?
Definitely correct. That is Bill Tuiloma, having scored the winner for Portland Timbers on the weekend against Austin City. Austin City had won, I think, 5-0 and 5-1 their first 2 games of the season, and Bill Tuiloma was part of the defense that kept them without a shot on target, and he scored the winner. It was probably his best game in the MLS, and he celebrated doing the little the gritty thing. The NFL dudes like to give the old things and a little strut and whatever. And that's him doing that on the background.
My lord.
That's the one.
Stats for me. We got Leo Thompson. Kiwi-NRL debutant Leo Thompson, who I believe is from the Hawke's Bay because he came up playing first 15 rugby for Napier Boys High School. He made his debut for the Newcastle Knights, and he played 25 minutes off the bench, 7 runs for 71 meters. So don't even need the calculator here. Not even going to go that deep into the statistical one. 7 runs, 71 meters. That is at least 10 meters per run. And that is the most important statistic we are looking for with our Kiwi-NRL forwards. Starting forwards need to do that, like Isaiah Papali'i, just fucking bonkers. But if you're coming off the bench and you're someone like Leo Thompson, you need to have impact. And 7 runs for 71 meters, at least 10 meters per run, that is impact, especially when you're also making 12 tackles with no missed tackles. So that is a pretty solid debut for Leo Thompson. And a couple more numbers just to help paint the picture. Last year, he played 12 games, I believe, of reserve grade with the Canberra Raiders. So this is a dude who went from 12 games of reserve grade last year, moves to the Newcastle Knights round 1. He's making his debut, and he's averaging at least 10 meters per run on debut, which I kind of think is pretty fucking impressive. So shout out Leo Thompson. Shout out his twin brother, Tyrone Thompson, who I also believe is in the Chiefs squad. And also shout out to Marist St. Pat's Rugby Club in Wellington, because Leo and Tyrone Thompson left Napier Boys High School and went to play a season of club rugby with Marist St. Pat's. And that's where Leo Thompson then departed to go to the Canberra Raiders. So very impressive debut for Leo Thompson, 25 minutes off the bench, 7 runs for 71 meters, and he had 2 passes as well. Why do I give a shit about 2 passes? Because NRL forwards generally have a limited range of passing. You might get the James Graham, the Isaiah Yeo, Penrith Panthers lock forward type of passing game where all the attacking funk for the Penrith Panthers comes via Isaiah Yeo. Whereas James Fisher-Harris is all about the mongrel, the aggressive nature, the power, and just the aggro grit and grind through the middle. Isaiah Yeo has a bit of a passing game. Leo Thompson played in the midfield when playing rugby union. What do midfielders in rugby union need to do? Be able to throw 10-meter passes either way. And that's a skill set most NRL forwards don't have, which when you combine with Leo Thompson's powerful running style is the foundations of a pretty good NRL forward, I believe. Deep in the Mangroves wildcard, who have you found?
I Stumbled on Mr. Stephen Adams there, deep in those mangroves. One thing that he definitely stood out. He's quite tall, so I could see him above the groves. One thing that we talk about quite often on these podcasts is about like team culture and what it takes and what goes into it, and how it works and all this, and the way in which it is reflected in like successful sports teams and organizations and stuff. Stephen Adams is also a person who talks a lot about that, because people keep asking him about that, because it's been like quite obviously a foundational aspect of the Memphis Grizzlies' big breakout season. And as it happens, they just put up like a little 10-minute video thing on their YouTube about that exact thing, like an analysis of their team's culture. Talking to a bunch of different people, including the coach, who says some very interesting things, but also Stephen Adams says some things. Specifically, he says, and I quote, "It's the culture of growth, very much about the bigger picture. We're not really dwelling on the small things, but there is a lot of attention to detail. Clear this up, move on. It isn't like they hold it against you or it drags you back. I mean, that sounds good on paper but for every person to be participating in it and actually enforcing it, that's another thing. That's crazy." So yeah, just him speaking of like the ways in which they're all moving in the same direction, all focused on the big goal, but then also this problem-solving aspect of being able to deal with little conflicts within games, tactical things, sorting out everyone on the right page. And the idea of everybody participating and being part of that process as well. I think that is crazy, and which makes it a pretty good sign to mention that the Grizzlies actually entered the season with the second youngest roster in the league, the second lowest salary cap hit, and they're currently the second seed in the Western Conference with a 47-22 record. So to paraphrase Mr. Adams there, the quotes about Memphis team culture, they look good on paper, but when you see it out on the court actually leading to win after win, that's crazy.
You stumbled across Stephen Adams in the mangroves, and I've stumbled across a equally as funky character in the one and only, the CDG, Colin de Grandhomme. I was trying to say Jiggy, but then I realized it's G, not J, and like Jiggy with the G might work. Colin de Grandhomme. But Colin de Grandhomme, deep in the mangroves, which is also as humorous as finding Stephen Adams in the mangroves, he's found form. And I just want to start by saying in his last 10 games, he's hit 3 centuries, which is fantastic for Colin de Grandhomme. The first of those centuries was in the Ford Trophy, and then he played 5 games of Super Smash, and he didn't bowl in any of those games, and he had a couple not outs, and he had an 86, but that was it. Then he goes into Plunkett Shield, scores of 13 and 17, bowls in both innings with 1 wicket in the first innings. Then he gets called up to the Black Caps Test squad wildcard, and you were pretty happy. I was happy. We're all happy for Colin de Grandhomme, sorry. But it was a bit of a surprise to me personally, just because he's been out of action for a while. Comes in with the 45 against South Africa, bowls but doesn't take a wicket. Second test versus South Africa, 120 not out and 18. 1 wicket in the second innings, but he bowls in both innings. And then he comes back into the Plunkett Shield with scores of 37 and 164 not out. 2 wickets in the first innings, 3 wickets in the second innings. Back-to-back centuries, 1 in Test cricket, 1 in Plunkett Shield. 3 centuries in his last 10 games. Bloody impressive for Colin de Grandhomme. And both of his most recent centuries feature Colin de Grandhomme smacking boundaries, but not to the extent that I think many would believe. Like, we think about Colin de Grandhomme batting, we think hit out or get out, kind of. Not to that extreme, but that's the vibe. Against South Africa, he showed some of that, but he scored 120 runs off 158 deliveries at a strike rate of 75, which is on the higher end of things, but it's not like dominant swashbuckling slugging. And then he comes into this Plunkett Shield century, 164 not out of 233 deliveries, a strike rate of 70, 11 fours and 7 sixes. So he is hitting boundaries as we expect Colin de Grandhomme to do so, but it's not like it's 164 off 170 deliveries or 180 or 150. He's still got a strike rate in the 70s. So that, to me, that tells me that there is some nous and balance in the way Colin de Grandhomme's batting. He'll fucking smack you for 6, and he'll do it again. And then he'll do it again. And then he'll do it again. But he's also showing some long-form batting quality, some class, rotating the strike, seeing out good balls, all that stuff that we want to see red ball batters do. And I don't think Colin de Grandhomme's gone anywhere, wildcard. He's I think some of these older statesmen, Neil Wagner, Salvi, Bolt, Williamson, those type of characters, Twilight Taylor, Red Sky Reid, they're just grafting away with some hard mahi. And Colin de Grandhomme feels like he is in a pretty decent patch. I can't think about the entirety of his career off the top of my head, but it feels like one of the better patches of his career, especially coming off selection in both tests against South Africa, which is a notable checkpoint for Colin de Grandhomme. Colin CDGiggy. Question time here, wildcard. My question is simply, what do you reckon? But to ask that, I need to set some things up, because yesterday in our Patreon podcast and the clip that's on our YouTube feed, we were discussing the New Zealand Aotearoa Warriors halves combination. And later on yesterday, I was thinking about like NRL halves and how similar they are to NBA guards. And for those who aren't, well versed in NBA or basketball, usually you have a point guard and a shooting guard. So easy way to break it down might be Chris Paul and Devin Booker with the Phoenix Suns. The Los Angeles Lakers suck in those positions, and hence they suck, right? Like that's the maybe the Bulldogs end of the stick, or whatever you want. Like if you got shit halves in the NRL, you're not doing anything. If you got shit guards in the NBA, you're not doing anything. And the teams who win usually have a organizing halfback, someone who steers the team around, does their basic mahi to the best of their abilities, as well as a bit of pizzazz. So think Nathan Cleary, right? Those type of players are quite similar to a Chris Paul, a Drew Holiday, even someone like Kyrie Irving. He's going to bring the ball up. He's going to make sure everyone else is getting their shots, set things up for other blokes, and then he can also razzle dazzle. NRL halves are either organizing halfback, dominant kind of playmaker, and then a razzle dazzle number 6, or they are split as in left and right halves. So left and right halves is kind of, to me, that's like getting too cute. Because I don't know if yes, they are generally, they stay on the side of the field, but there is a difference between a number 7 who's always at first receiver, organizing things, and then like situations where you just play left and right half. That's the equivalent of an NBA team playing with 2 point guards or 2 shooting guards. And that actually reminds me of the Golden State Warriors, because you can have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson as your guard combination, but Steph Curry likes to do a lot of other shit. He likes to run around. He likes to get the ball, catch and shoot. And the Warriors are better with Draymond Green organizing all of that, distributing the ball around. So I think I've done an okay job describing the comparison there. What do you reckon?
I like the comparison. I think it works nicely in a couple levels, because like the Warriors one is the Golden State Warriors, that is a frisky comparison slightly, because like it's kind of both of those things, as you pretty much highlighted there. Like Steph Curry is a legit point guard. He can do all the point guard things, but he's also amazing playing off the ball. and like with ball out of his hands and his cuts to the basket for like an easy little layup of those normally like often Draymond Green little passes back into him. And also he shoots like a shooting guard. He's the greatest shooter of all time, and one of the other greatest shooters of all time is probably Klay Thompson, who's next to him. So it kind of, when you've got that level of shooting, anything works. Like you're all good there. You can make it happen. Notice what the Lakers miss most of all in their like backcourt pairings is shooting. Like Russell Westbrook's never been a good outside shooter. The Memphis Grizzlies are an interesting comparison because I think they have like Ja Morant's a different type of point guard to Chris Paul, but it's kind of the same thing. Like in his own way, he runs the show. He's trying to like there's a lot of work with Steven Adams around screens and trying to get to the rim and stuff like that. And he is going to be a high volume scorer, not necessarily the pass first, shoot second idea of like Chris Paul. But that's running the offense in his own way. And Desmond Bane is an ideal like shooting guard to have off of him because he's just a knockdown triple hunter. Like it's a different version of that dynamic, but I think it works really nicely. And then I think a good example of the ways in which that doesn't work, the idea of having like two playmaking NRL halves type thing is what the Brooklyn Nets had, which were just because of the sheer amount of talent, but ultimately two very ball dominant type players. And there's only one ball. Like it's both of those guys wanted to be the number 7 in an NRL capacity, right? And I think, there's plenty of examples of it working where like two guys who both sort of fit that role can adapt their games around and each do a little bit of what the other might not do or whatever. Like I think you could, I'm pretty sure you could find you could make a winning NRL team with like a young Nathan Cleary and an old Cooper Cronk. I don't think that would be a problem, even though they're both in that 7 role. But it can be sometimes, like especially if there's two guys at a state in their career where neither of them is quite ready for a thing. And that's what you saw with Kyrie Irving and James Harden. Obviously didn't help that Kyrie Irving wasn't there for half the games, which meant that James Harden is going from one game having to be ball dominant, next game not playing at all. So all in all, we could probably both go on like 100 more examples of the way in which that dynamic works. It's really interesting. Might even chuck in like the point guard and center combinations as well if you go and deeper on that thing to bring Steven Adams into the mix. But what do I reckon? I reckon there's something. I reckon you're onto something there. I reckon there's something to that idea. I
will just look like the Warriors where you've got Draymond, Steph, and Klay. To me, that's the Panthers because Isaiah Yeo does a lot of the setting up.
Oh yeah,
as a forward, and then like Jerome Lua is fantastic. Nathan Cleary is fantastic. Like loosely, that system is quite similar, I believe, and that's what makes them unique from other NRL teams. That's what makes the Warriors unique from other NBA teams. Your question?
Yeah, that's an even better, deeper comparison. My question, nice and simple: who was the standout Kiwi-NRL performer of the week 1 of the 2022 season?
Oh, I can't do one.
Fair enough. First equal.
We've got some fantastic Aotearoa Kiwis or Kiwi-NRL troopers in the NRL. I did write about Isaiah Papali'i today. He was fantastic on the right edge for Parramatta Eels, continuing his like breakthrough season from last year in round 1 for the Parramatta Eels. Like, I'm still amazed at just how dudes can't tackle him. Which when you go watch like his powerlifting stuff and the stuff he did as a kid, and then you look into like his pedigree where he was helping Mag's first 15 win like games and competitions, I believe, as well as his decorated New Zealand Rugby League junior stuff. Like he was a bit of a prodigy in the junior ranks. We just didn't see it at the Warriors. So I'm kind of in the space where he's always had this potential, but then you don't see it at the NRL level. So it's like, where did this come from? But if you look deeply into like his footy history, it's easy to see where it's come from. Other top tier dudes like James Fisher-Harris was typically excellent for the Penrith Panthers, again doing a different role to Isaiah Yeo, but playing his role very well, which then helps Isaiah Yeo do a different role. Always do your role. And then, you know, things work out. Jerome Hughes at halfback for the Melbourne Storm. He's an interesting player, especially as we're getting into Kiwis World Cup campaign. If you asked me at the end of the last World Cup, the absolute shambles of 2017, who will be the next World Cup half for Aotearoa, I don't think anyone's like answering Jerome Hughes, but he's probably the leading contender right now. Thought also Nelson Asofa-Solomona was fantastic for the Storm as well, given that he didn't do a lot of summer training due to some pandemic stuff, some Kyrie Irving pandemic stuff. So he just kind of popped back into summer training, and then he's like a dominant force in round one. So those feel like the best players off the top of my dome. And yeah, all those top tier Kiwis, shout out to the Kiwi-NRL players who are also eligible for Samoa, Tonga, Cook Islands, Fiji. But the top tier Kiwis have all started the season pretty well in round one, and everything is going to be framed with the World Cup. Same goes for the Wahine, same goes for Tonga and Samoa, that I think a lot about with that Kiwi-NRL lens on it as well. So if those players are playing well, we're cooking. Musical jam wildcard, what do you got?
Couple decent new albums that I've had sort of like glancing listens over, and listened to the singles a bit ahead of time, and looking forward to a little bit deeper into. Young Gov 3, there's a decent one. Weather Station, new album as well. Both Canadian acts, those two actually. And then Robert Glasper's got a new one of his sort of ongoing black radio projects. And we're also edging closer to the new Oldest Harding record as well, which I think is going to be a cracker. Another very good single came out in the last couple of days, so a bit of a Kiwi one on the end of that as well.
I have been listening to a new project from a rapper by the name of Fly Anakin. He's got a new album, Frank. Very frank title there. And Fly Anakin apparently is from Virginia. Definitely, like, obviously regular listeners know the vibe. They know the hip hop steez that we operate here with. Bit of a the slowed down, sample heavy, avant-garde, underground hip hop. He's got production on the album from Madlib, Evidence, as well as Jay Versace, self-produced songs as well, Fly Anakin. And it's just really solid hip hop. Like, it's obviously, it's in alignment with our musical taste, but a lot of other people, they won't necessarily connect with this type of hip hop when they hear that it's hip hop, because their perception of hip hop might be different, but it's definitely a representation of the type of movements and the musical funk that is happening in hip hop. I was going to limit it to a geographical area, but it's not at all limited to a geographical area. And Fly Anakin's Bandcamp page, where you can find the album Frank, includes this quote from Madlib, that Fly Anakin is one of the illest MCs. So that goes well. If Madlib's calling you one of the illest MCs, that's more than enough reason for me to listen to it. And it should be more than enough reason for you to listen to it as well. So check out the album named Frank from Fly Anakin. And you'll be put onto a whole different wave of music if you go through listen to that, and then all your recommendations will get into some really cool hip hop as well. So big it up there. Big it up to the variety show. Big it up to the niche case. Big it up to Aotearoa. Beautiful Aotearoa. Looking splendid as always. Putting out a vibe. And we're here to tap in. Tune in. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Choo choo.